This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome into the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. My name is Anthony. Ben, he is very sick right now, so he can't be in here, but he will be back in on Friday. So in the meantime, we're going to talk about some stuff in the world of sports. So going on ESPN, one of the first stories I have on there is a headline talking about NFL mulling ejections and all these other things. Troy Vincent, who he is vice president of football operations. He spoke about committee and how they have plans basically to try and tweak with a couple of different things, right? So he tweeted out the committee is also exploring ways, including considering immediate ejections or suspensions to take dangerous hits out of the game. So they're doing this again, right? They're trying to basically make a trying to make a violent game not violent. Which, on the face of it's hard to do to begin with, right? Like, you're going to try and make a game that clearly is very violent. You're going to try and make that safe. All right, cool. Have fun with that. And, looking at this article, it says the committee and them, they could suggest automatic suspensions for egregious hits at next week's NFL owners' meetings in Chicago. So the NFL currently has a rule to protect defenseless receivers, right? It's like Rule 12, Section 2, Article 7, blah, blah, blah. You get a 15-yard penalty if that happens, right? For unnecessary contact against a player who is in defenseless posture, right? It's one of those things where if you knock, the receiver out, but it's one of those plays where it looks like he's clearly not able to defend himself, okay, 15-yard penalty, flag, and everything else like that. Now, you can get ejected, but that doesn't really happen. So what they're basically trying to say is they're going to want to basically, how the NBA has like a flagrant foul, right? Like you can commit a foul. Obviously, you have 6 fouls, you can commit in a game. But if you do something that's clearly not a basketball play, then you get either a flagrant 1 or a flagrant 2, and you can get kicked out of the game for that, right? This is kind of what they're trying to do with that, right? They're trying to basically make flagrant fouls in the NFL, and they basically say like, okay, so if you do something like that, then you got to go. If you're going to hit a guy, that's fine. But if it's kind of like almost like the targeting rule, I don't know if you ever realize the targeting rule in college football. The targeting rule in college football is basically if you're doing something just to light a dude up, right? Or if you're doing something just to, I would even say like a bounty kind of hit on them. But like if it's not a football play, right? Targeting, kicked out. So the NFL is trying to adopt a rule like that, which on the face of it, I'm not against. Like, I totally get how you want to do something like that to make it so you can understand, or you can make people understand that you can't just go over there and try and rock a dude just because, that's the way you want to play. Like, you got to kind of play within the rules. So I get that. It's going to be probably a little bit harder to enforce, but I can at least, understand where they're coming from, because whether or not you think the NFL cares about player safety, and they probably don't, you still have to at least have the, outward look of you're trying to make this game safe, and you're trying to make something that is violent not as violent going forward, because there's been enough lawsuits, there's been enough this and that. You got to make the game look like it's safe. So going on from that a little bit, you also have, quote, player accountability, taunting and excessive celebration fouls, and basically trying to get a grip, quote unquote, on that. So look, man, I am not the one here for yelling at players about, oh, you can't celebrate too much. You need to have, some respect for the game and don't excessively celebrate, da-da-da. Like, look, man, you understand how hard it is, A, to score a touchdown in the NFL, and B, just to play in the NFL? Like, you understand how much you had to do just to get to that point? Like, I don't care if you celebrate, man. Like, I am not here to regulate your joy. I am not here to regulate your fun. If you want to go out there and have a blast and dance a bunch of times, I don't care. If you want to be Joe Horn taking a cell phone out of the goalpost, fine. If you're T.O. and you want to celebrate with some pom-poms or sign a football, I don't care. If you're Randy Moss and you want to fake moon the crowd, I don't care. It's really hard to play in the NFL. But, they're going to start looking at these things too. And the weirdest part is, Troy Vincent, again, tweeting the stuff out, we're developing an educational training video for players to show clear examples of appropriate and inappropriate celebrations. What is, like, inappropriate celebrations? That just sounds like, what is an inappropriate celebration? Like, if you celebrate with teammates, like, that's fun. Like, why do we regulate fun? Why? Please, no one's ever really been able to explain to me why we want to regulate fun. The easiest and shortest way people keep saying is, oh, well, you have to respect the game. Okay, number one, it's a game, but fine. Like, you want us to respect the game. Why is me having fun and dancing for a little bit disrespecting the game? I'm playing the game. I caught a touchdown, or I got a first down, or whatever. It is something important. And now I get, want to basically, feel happy about what I did. It's a really hard thing that I did. And I was able to persevere and do something that makes me happy. Let me have my few minutes of joy. Now, if you do something kind of Key and Peele style where it's like a 5-10 minute celebration and it's choreographed, okay, fine. Yeah. I'm all here about, okay, probably you shouldn't do that. I get stuff can be in moderation. That's totally fine. But for like a few seconds of celebrating, even if you bring in other people, I've never really cared about that, man. Like, that's something you are literally just like governing joy. You are literally a kid who's like laughing in his room watching some Netflix special and the parents just bust in. What are you doing? Why are you laughing? Stop laughing. Like, it's really weird. No, like, you're basically like, no fun in here, and shut the door. Like, why? It just, I don't know. Like, the NFL always does these kind of things, right? Like, soccer allows you to have these goals, and, it's even harder to do stuff like that in soccer, right? If you score a goal in soccer, you were pretty good, and they pretty much let you do what you want afterwards for a little bit, get your, happiness out there, and then go from there. Baseball, I mean, you can do it, but there's no rules against it. There's like unwritten rules of it, right? There's a thing where if you want to celebrate the trot around the bases, you can do it, but you're going to get beaned the next time. But at least they let you do it. They don't, kick you out of the game or give you a penalty for it. Even in basketball, like, you can flex after you do stuff. I mean, yeah, there's taunting, and you can't look at the crowd and just be like, what? Yeah. Like, you can't do stuff like that. But, for the most part, they let you kind of like, flex your muscles when you're going away. What is it? Steph Curry a few days ago, like, he made a shot, and he just basically started running into the tunnel, gave a 5 to Kevin Durant when he was running in there. Like, other leagues let you do stuff like this, right? Like, other leagues let you have some fun. They let you, in hockey do a couple of things too. Like, the NFL is the only league really where they're all, fossilized and musty, and it's just like, I don't like the way this is being celebrated. You need to show proper respect to the game. I don't know what that was. I don't know what that voice was, but you get my point. Now, you may not agree with me, and you may think that I'm totally wrong with this, and that part's totally fine. Like, we all can disagree and whatever else like this. Not everybody thinks the same way, right? Like I said, I love Randy Moss. I understand I'm not exactly in the majority with that because I get a lot of people don't like the fact that he was the showboater and he did all these things, the straight cash homie, and I play when I want to play, all these other things that he said like that. I get that he is not necessarily someone that is considered beloved, but my whole thing, whether it was celebrating or even with something like this now with the, excessive, hits, right? The flagrant hit and stuff like that. For the taunting, I don't get it. But for the excessive hits, I understand you wanted to do this, but it also comes down to, like, how many of these things are you actually going to be able to regulate and have it work? Because that's the thing that comes down to the core of all of this, right? The celebrating, right? Yeah, you can crack down on it. You can say, like, you're not going to do this and we're going to punish you for it. But is that making your sport better, right? By you basically trying to, like, you know, sterilize all of these kind of players and these things, are you making the game better? Are you making it more fun? Baseball, you don't do it, and baseball is a very slow game. You add all these things together, mixed in with the fact that there's no stars really in baseball, the fact that it's slow, the fact that it's boring, the fact there are all those things in, it hurts baseball. Now, football still has the scarcity of you're only playing 16 games so people care about it. But if you keep making everything so sterilized to where nobody has any personality and the game, you keep regulating all these rules about hits and penalties and everything else like that, you're slowly kind of chipping away at what the NFL is, which is a violent game that people like, that every now and then bad things might happen. And I get that you don't want the bad things to happen, but people also don't want the bad things to happen in a sport like MMA or boxing. Bad things happen there sometimes. In the NFL, you're colliding for a living. Your job as a defensive player is to basically say, like, oh, that guy has the ball. Okay, I'm going to make his life hurt for the next 25 minutes, right? Like, that's your job, man. So I totally don't see the point of the celebrations. I do see the point in the flagrant foul situations. I just think it's going to be hard to regulate, right? Because, again, with the highs and lows of players when they play, like they can catch a ball high and then duck low, and then all of a sudden you get a hit. It's going to be hard to regulate this. But at least I kind of understand where they're going with the hits, not so much as the celebrations. But with that said, we're going to take a break. We're going to come right back here on the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concept Sports Podcast. All right, so switching gears a little bit, we're going to go back to the NBA, and more specifically, LaVar Ball. You know LaVar Ball, right? Everybody knows LaVar Ball at this point. He is the father of Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, and LiAngelo Ball. You know, he is the one that has basically took it upon himself to basically be the hype man of the Ball family. I don't know exactly what you would want to call him, because he's basically just making the rounds, doing interviews for anybody that wants to talk to him. And said some outlandish things in the past. Said in his prime he could take Jordan one-on-one. That seems unwise, but okay. Said he could beat Charles Barkley one-on-one, because after he said the whole thing about LeBron, Barkley's just like, all right, man, look, you want to do this? Fine, we're going to go right now. We'll play one-on-one right now, see how it goes. And the best part of that whole thing was when that was happening, it got back to LaVar Ball. LaVar is like, and he's talking about how Barkley was making fun of him, saying like, oh, man, you only averaged 2 points when you were playing for college basketball. And LaVar Ball's retort, 100% honest, was, yeah, he talks about how I averaged 2 points in college, but he didn't talk about all the points I averaged in JUCO. JUCO meaning junior college. And what? What do you mean? What do you mean all the stuff you averaged junior college? Do you not understand that that's junior college, and Charles Barkley was playing in the NBA against Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley was playing against Clyde Drexler. Charles Barkley was playing against Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, all these people. And I don't understand what LaVar Ball is doing, but at least we're talking about him, right? So all of that happened, and now it basically got to LeBron James, and LeBron James basically said now basically like, stop. Like, you want to talk about other stuff? Fine, but you talk about me. And he started talking about LeBron James's kids, and that's when LeBron was like, all right, it's dad to dad now. It's a problem now. Stop. Basically, what happened is LeBron has two sons, right? He has a 12-year-old named LeBron James Jr. and a 9-year-old named Bryce Maximus James. And, you know, they're good basketball players, you know, going to be on the AAU circuit, all that stuff like that. They got offers from Duke, Kentucky, all those teams because, of course, they want LeBron James's kids, right? Obviously. Now, you know, Ball was, you know, on an episode of In the Zone with Chris Broussard on his podcast. Ball was talking about how, you know, his kids were set up better for future success than James's kids was. And his point is actually not invalid. Just, I don't know why he keeps saying these things, right? Because he says, as far as it goes with LaVar Ball, he was saying the Machos in the NBA, their dads weren't that good. They were okay, but the fact that Del Curry wasn't an all-star, he wasn't cold, he could shoot the ball, though. Kobe Bryant, his dad wasn't all that. That's why he was such a monster. You got LeBron, it's going to be hard for his kids because they're going to look at it like, you got to be like your dad. And after a while, that pressure will start getting to them, like, you know, why aren't you as good as him? Why can't you be like him? And then you're going to be like, okay, you're soft, you're not that good because the expectations were so very, very high. Which I actually get that on one level, right? It's one of those things of like you try to live up to the expectations of what people, you know, think you can be, right? It's one of the reasons why Walter Payton's kid wasn't as good as a running back. It's one of the reasons why Michael Jordan's kids weren't as good because you do have all the expectations to live up to, right? If you're LeBron James's kid, if you're Kobe Bryant's kid, if you're anybody like that's kid, you are going to have all the expectations because, okay, well, you have all these genetic gifts that were given to you by your father. Play just like him. And Del Curry was a good player, but he wasn't what Steph Curry is, right? Michael Thompson was a good player. He's not what Klay Thompson has become, right? You get these kind of next generation athletes, right, who have the potential to be really good, but we even have seen people like Glenn Robinson III, right? He wasn't as good as his father. You know, you have all these people that are like kids now from the NBA, right? I believe Patrick Ewing had a son that came from Georgetown. He didn't make it in the NBA. Like, you do have the pressure of being the son of an all-time great, and that doesn't necessarily always work out. Even something like Austin Rivers, right, who is the kid of Doc Rivers, who did have a successful playing career in the NBA, playing with Dominique Wilkins, the Atlanta Hawks, among other things. He's okay, but even he had a lot of pressure when he was in Duke and then coming to the league playing for your father. Like, there are expectations to come from that. Don't get me wrong to make it think like there's not expectations to come from being the son of a great athlete. But what LeBron is basically saying is, look, man, I understand you want to talk all this braggadocious stuff about, oh, my son is better than Steph Curry. Oh, we want to go play with the Lakers. Oh, we want $1 billion contract. Fine. Get your money, do all that stuff like that. That's totally fine. He's got nothing against that. It's once you start going up, you know, and talking about his kids, right? Saying like, do not disrespect my kids. And that's a total paternal kind of emotion. And I totally understand that. I totally respect that from LeBron, basically saying like, look, man, you want to talk about how I'm not good of a player and how your kids can beat me? Fine. Like, we can have fun and go back and forth with that all day long. But once you talk about my kids, who, by the way, are 12 and 9 years old, there is very much a father in the wild kind of thing with that. You know, it's like the lions who, you know, they protect their young, and all of a sudden just some strange animal goes over poking around, you know, next to them. They're going to attack, and that's what LeBron did. And I totally understand that, respect that. And, you know, I don't know how much longer we're going to let LaVar Ball keep talking. Because don't get me wrong, on the face of it, it's funny, right? Because LaVar Ball seems like a crazy person, right? He's just talking for the sake of talking, and he's getting a lot of publicity from it because we ended up talking about this, myself, as well as other people on ESPN or Fox Sports 1 or whatever network you want to talk about. They're all talking about LaVar Ball, which does great for his kids, right? Because it gets publicity for the kids, and, whether or not it's going to make them a good NBA player, it could get them some marketing deals, right? Which will cut into the billion-dollar stuff that they want to do. So I totally get the every kind of publicity is good publicity kind of thing. I get that, and that's totally cool. But he's going to keep ratcheting this up, right? LaVar's not going to all of a sudden stop, right? Just because, he maybe overstepped his bounds a little bit with this whole LeBron thing doesn't mean all of a sudden now he's going to be like, oh, I clearly see the errors of my ways. I will no longer do this anymore, and I will be quiet going forward. I don't know if you've realized who LaVar Ball actually is. He's not going to do that. That's not how this is going to go. He's going to keep talking until he says something, and then we as a collective are going to be like, oh, okay, cool, no, you're done. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know when that comes. But at least for right now, this story not included, it's funny with LaVar Ball. Instead of taking him seriously, which some people try to do, and say like, oh, no, he can't beat Michael Jordan. It's Michael Jordan. Look, clearly he's not going to beat Michael Jordan. You could put LaVar Ball and everybody he knows as a 1-on-5 tournament. Michael Jordan's still going to beat all 5 of them. At this age, LaVar Ball could try and back Jordan down all he wants to. Not going to work, right? Michael Jordan will beat 1-on-5 right now just because he's going to hard foul everybody and just like yell at them all the time and just break their psyche, something like that. Michael Jordan is a crazy person. And for right now, LaVar Ball, maybe overstepped a little bit. That's fine. Stuff happens. I just wonder when this is actually going to hit a point when it's going to be like, oh, okay, no, that went too far, and now we're done with LaVar Ball, because you get other times you get like a famous family member, right? Whether it's the Williams sisters and their father, whether it's, I think it's Reggie Rose, Derrick Rose's brother, who would talk to the media a lot. You had the situation where Marcus Vick started talking for Michael Vick a lot of times and would just go on Twitter and do all these rants. We tend to not like the family members as a mouthpiece for the famous athletes. And I guess we let this go right now with LaVar Ball because Lonzo's in college, and college kids don't tend to talk outside of after a game when they do like a press conference, right? Like they don't let them do like media stuff outside of that. So I guess LaVar Ball is being the one that can help his kids out in that aspect. But once Lonzo gets to the NBA, I don't think we're going to allow LaVar Ball to keep doing the stuff like that, because we're going to say, like, for lack of a better term, get a hold of your dad. Stop letting him talk for you. If you want to talk, you talk, but don't let him be your mouthpiece. But with that being said, we're going to take the last break. We'll be right back here on the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. All right, so switching back to the NFL for a second. Hey, there's nothing really happening in the NFL exactly at this moment as far as games go. So let's have Mel Kiper Jr. throw up his mock draft. We're going to talk about that for a little bit because, hey, we always love mock drafts. So he came out with mock draft 3.0, right? Mel Kiper did. And all this really is just kind of fodder for us to kind of understand who these people are, because let's be honest, man, outside of Mel Kiper and Todd McShay and people like that, like you and I have no idea who these people are. We know who Myles Garrett is. We know Mitch Trubisky. I don't know why he wants to be called Mitchell, but Mitchell Trubisky. We know who he is. We know Dalvin Cook is, Leonard Fournette. We know probably up to 10 people in the draft, right? We know Dalvin Cook. We know who else? McCaffrey. We know a handful of people that are in the draft, but by no means do we know everybody that's in the draft. And he released the mock draft, which is one of those things where it's insider protected, right? Like you got to be an NFL insider or an NFL ESPN insider in order to see the entirety of the mock draft. But then again, Reddit also exists. So the nice people basically copied and pasted the entire thing, which Shout out to Reddit. Good job for you on that. So basically, he's got the Cleveland Browns taking Myles Garrett, the Niners taking Solomon Thomas, who's a defensive lineman from Stanford. I said who Solomon Thomas was, and I didn't say who Myles Garrett was, because I think at this point Myles Garrett's one of those people that you know about, this big old defensive end out of Texas A&M. The Bears, let's have them taking Jamal Adams, the safety out of LSU. The Jaguars, Jonathan Allen, defensive lineman out of Alabama. And the Titans taking Marshawn Lattimore, who's a cornerback out of Ohio State. Okay, now why do I talk about that? Why do I talk about this mock draft? And why do I break it down? Oh, and by pick 1, he takes this. And number 2, he takes this. And number 3, he takes this. The reason why I say all this is because it's garbage. It's nonsense. And there's nothing against Mel Kiper. He's a very smart guy. And I guarantee you that all these people are going to be taken in and around where they're being, alleged to be taken, right? Will it be 100% that the Jaguars take Jonathan Allen at the 4 spot? No, maybe he goes 5th, 6th, 7th, 3rd, somewhere around there. That'll probably happen. The reason why I say this is nonsense is because I don't think Myles Garrett is going to be the number 1 guy, and I don't think Solomon Thomas is going to be the number 2 guy. Now, why do I say that? Because you have the people like Mitchell Trubisky, you have the people like a Dalvin Cook, you have all these people, Deshaun Watson, Dalvin Cook's running back, Deshaun Watson, you have these quarterbacks, right, who people love, right? And eventually what happens is every now and then it slowly trickles up and up and up and up. Okay? Jared Goff last year, not that good at Cal, number 1 overall pick. Carson Wentz, small school, kept coming up the draft board, number 2 overall draft pick. And we'll always talk ourselves in to a quarterback, right? Because the NFL is so scarce with NFL talent at quarterback, right? Like, we basically want the quarterback to do well, and we will always give them the benefit of the doubt because we want them to help save a franchise, right? That's the thing that they are the best for, is giving your team hope. And this really wasn't any clearer than back in 2011, right? Cam Newton was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Cool. Great player. Von Miller, Marcel Darius, A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones, Aldon Smith were all the top 7 players taken in that draft. Fantastic draft, right? Von Miller is one of the best defensive players we got in the game. A.J. Green is one of the best, and Julio Jones is 2 of the best wide receivers we have in the game. Aldon Smith, as long as he keeps his head right, was a great NFL defensive player, and so is Patrick Peterson and Marcel Darius. All of them really good. Even other people that are coming there, the 9th pick, Tyson Smith, the 11th pick, J.J. Watt, the 14th pick, Robert Quinn, the 15th pick, Mike Pouncey, the 16th pick, Ryan Kerrigan. All these people, even Nick Fairley, the 13th overall pick, really good, right? All of them had good careers and got paid a lot of money and made Pro Bowls because they're great. Okay, why do I talk about that draft? At the 8th pick, Jake Locker. At the 10th pick, Blaine Gabbert. At the 12th pick, Christian Ponder. All 3 of those guys stink. Some of them aren't even really playing anymore, like Jake Locker, who's retired, and Christian Ponder, who, if he is still in the league, not 100% sure whether he is or isn't, doesn't play. Blaine Gabbert, he's in the league. He stinks. He couldn't play well for the Niners. He couldn't play well for the Jaguars. Given both those teams are terrible, but he stinks. You tend to reach for a quarterback, right? That tends to be what you want to do. Right now, he's got Mitchell Trubisky at 12 to the Cleveland Browns, oddly enough. And don't get me wrong, if they can both get Myles Garrett and Mitch Trubisky, congratulations, cancel Christmas, go home, everything's great and jolly in Cleveland, right? Congratulations if that happens. And then he's got the 13th pick, the Cardinals taking Deshaun Watson. Now, I'm not saying that the Cardinals may not take Deshaun Watson. Maybe that does happen. But you got to assume the quarterback's going to be drafted high because it's a hope thing, right? It's basically you wishing that the team comes up and gets the quarterback that helps save your franchise, because with Andrew Luck, you had Peyton Manning. He was great. Now you got Andrew Luck, and he gives you hope. Cam Newton gave Carolina hope. Right? Matt Ryan, one of the reasons that the Falcons were so good this year was because you had Matt Ryan have a bounce-back year. You always want that quarterback that can give you some hope, right? That's basically how this goes. Yeah, sometimes you get a dud, and yeah, sometimes you get a quarterback who's just okay. No one really knows in Miami if Ryan Tannehill's good or not, but at least he's good enough to get you by. Even someone like an Andy Dalton, who is a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, is better than the alternative, right? That's why Sam Bradford got so much when he was getting traded to the Vikings. Yeah, they were in a desperate situation because the quarterback basically had his leg explode on him, but you needed to have some stability at quarterback. You needed to be reassured that everything was going to be fine. And now with these mock drafts coming out, Myles Garrett is a freak of nature. Do not get me wrong. But he'll probably go third, maybe second in the draft, third, fourth, something like that, because you want the hope of a quarterback. People talk about Leonard Fournette going number 2 overall to the Niners. Who knows if that happens or not, but the point is, all of this stuff is in flux. All of these mock drafts, we're all just basically lying, saying we know what's going to happen, and all we're doing is basically trying to say this player is good because this analyst said this, and we're just basically getting ourselves acquainted with everybody that's in the draft. That's it. It's us getting acquainted with who Myles Garrett is, who Solomon Thomas is, who Jamal Adams is, who Jonathan Allen is. It's just us basically hearing that name enough times and seeing him on those draft boards enough times to be like, oh, I've heard about that guy. I think he'll be good. And then when he gets drafted, you have hope. Case in point, my team, the Miami Dolphins, they stunk 2 years ago. They've been stinking the last decade and a half. Either they're just really bad or they just win about 7 games and in that mid-tier where they don't get anybody good. Last year, they had a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick. And the lucky thing for them was they had the gas mask bong, Larry Tunsil, dropped to them. And a guy who should have been a top 2, top 3 pick dropped to the Dolphins because everybody started freaking out. And they said, oh, we can't have a guy on our team that smokes weed, even though a lot of people in the NFL smoke weed. He dropped to the Dolphins. Oh, happy day. Congratulations. Now it's good. And I've also heard of the guy. So we were happy when the pick was announced that Larry Tunsil was going to the Miami Dolphins. So if we keep hearing Jonathan Allen, defensive lineman out of Alabama, and there's some controversy that comes out about him, and all of a sudden he drops to, let's call it, the 13th pick with the Arizona Cardinals. Oh, my God, they got another defensive player. Look at them. They're going to be amazing. Like I said, all this is just us basically saying, oh, we have Hassan Reddick, linebacker out of Temple. He's going to go to New Orleans. Okay, let's keep hearing his name to make sure we understand he's good. Mike Williams, wide receiver out of Clemson. Now, we saw him in the national championship game. He really mattered for them, right? So we keep hearing his name enough with the Buffalo Bills. Maybe he slides down a little bit to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, all of a sudden, Carson Wentz has somebody to throw to. Maybe he goes to Indianapolis. Now, all of a sudden, Andrew Luck can throw to somebody outside of T.Y. Hilton all the time. All this stuff is in flux. All this stuff could change on a whim. But for right now, the only reason we have these mock drafts is to get better acquainted with who these players are. And like I said, the quarterbacks, like Deshaun Watson, he's 13th. He wasn't that high a few weeks ago. He's slowly coming up the draft. Don't be surprised if he isn't in the top 2 in the NFL draft when they actually do this later in the year. But with that being said, my name is Anthony. I will have Ben here on Friday with me, and I will have Pauline tomorrow to come help me out with this. But that being said, we're going to leave here. You guys have a good day, and I will talk to you guys later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.